Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, September 11th, and welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. We have two pretty big items on our agenda today. First is a briefing and work session on the Montgomery County pedestrian plan, master plan, and then that will be followed with an in-depth briefing on the Purple Line, part of our semi-annual update on the Purple Line. But first we will start with the pedestrian master plan, and there are an esteemed group of planning and transportation officials before us. But before I turn it over to you all and Dr. Orland to walk us through, it is a really good thing that we're having this conversation. This is the first pedestrian master plan that has been produced here in Montgomery County, and it comes on the heels of our Vision Zero work, recognizing that we want to make sure everyone feels safe walking in our community, and having policies and procedures and plans in place as guideposts to help get us there is really important to fulfilling this work. And the work is incredibly important. This year alone, there have been 392 pedestrians who have been injured on our roadways. And we are 3/4 of the way through this year, and 392 pedestrians and bicyclists have been injured. And 10 pedestrians and bicyclists have been killed. Again, centering and focusing ourselves on our neighbors and loved ones as to why this work is important. And so with that, unless colleagues have any other comments, I'll turn it over to Dr. Orland to walk us through the packet.
I think Director Stern would like to give a couple of opening comments.
There you go. Director Stern.
Good afternoon, Council members. Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director with the Planning Department. Just wanted to say very briefly, because I know we've got a lot to get through today, that I am very excited that we are here to have this opportunity to start to work with the Council on reviewing our pedestrian master plan. We do like to say this really is a groundbreaking plan, and as Council President Glass just noted, the basic premise of it is to make sure that this county is safe for all of our residents to walk and roll. And so with that, that is really guiding the wide variety of recommendations in this plan. We are very interested in hearing the committee's feedback on the ideas, and at the end of the day, making sure that Montgomery County is an attractive place to walk and roll. The other sort of last point I wanted to make is that this plan also, in addition to the county's Vision Zero strategy, also helps to implement Thrive Montgomery 2050, which is very much focused on enabling Montgomery County becoming more multimodal, including a great place to walk. And it also helps to implement the Climate Action Plan, which calls out this plan specifically as an important resource. So with that, I will turn it back over to the team.
Good.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The pedestrian master plan is a very comprehensive effort. It's taken several years to complete. It includes 34 discrete recommendations and no less than 110 key actions that are recommended. The hope today is we get through as much of this plan as we can, but I think around 3 o'clock we have scheduled a Purple Line briefing, so I think we'll probably stop around that point.
Right. I want to be thorough in our conversation, not be rushed, right? So we'll adhere to our own speed limits on this, and then turn it over to the Purple Line conversation thereafter.
Right, and so we have another work session scheduled for next Monday to hopefully complete the plan review. First, there's for every master plan, there's a fiscal impact statement that's required by the county code, by state law actually, and the OMB and the executive branch have completed that. Their estimate is that the cost of everything in the plan, if it's all done, would be on the order of $7.1 billion. That doesn't include several items for which they could not cost out with the effect of the fiscal effect would be of the key action because it's a bit general. It also doesn't include, for example, right-of-way costs for some of the sidewalks that would have to be built and right-of-ways required. There's some other recommendations for studies, which they themselves could lead to more actions, which would increase the cost more. It also they also estimate that the cost would be $124 million in annual operating costs to do the entire plan to their fullest. Put in context, the county capital cost, if this is over 25 years, would be $284 million in current year dollars annually, which is actually more than our spending affordability guidelines for the entire CIP for general obligation bonds. And $124 million in annual operating costs would increase the DOT general fund budget by 44%. It's clear that doing all of that, even within a 50-year time frame, let's say, is not affordable if we're trying to do everything in this plan to the letter. So I think what's important is that, so as not to overpromise and to lead to other unintended consequences, that we mitigate the recommendations, and I'll have some recommendations a little later in this discussion, as to reducing the expectations, I guess, a bit from what this plan is laying out. There is a climate assessment, of course, which is now required for master plans. It was done by the planning board staff. They're pointing out that if you do the whole plan, it'll have a slight to moderate positive effect in the aggregate on the climate goals in the climate action plan. The positive side of it is that it increases the likelihood that people who are commuting or making other trips will walk rather than drive for the shorter trips, and that's positive, obviously, for the environment. It also is advocating more street trees, which is positive for the environment. Some negative aspects of it is to the extent that sidewalks are built in floodplains or where there's forest cover being reduced, or just the fact that they're basically an additional amount of impervious surface sort of works against the climate action plan. But again, the aggregate finding is that if you did everything, the impact would be slight to moderate positive. My point is, because we're not likely to do all of this plan, in fact, we're not likely to do a lot of this plan, the impact still would be positive, but more likely just be slight. But it's still positive. The way the packet's organized starting on page 3 is we go through the comments from each of a couple different sources. The main ones come from the Department of Transportation and the Vision Zero coordinator, Wade Holland, who is here also. And then followed by comments from the city of Gaithersburg, and then comments from myself that were not made by DOT or Gaithersburg. There were some other comments, individual ones from the town of Kensington and the Greater Albany Civic Association and a few others, which refer to some other recommendations that DOT or Gaithersburg or myself had made, so I'll refer to those as we go through. So on page 3, the first comment is having to do with the scope of the plan. The DOT believes that the plan really would put the planning board in a position where they've overstepped their bounds in terms of what their authority is. They're afraid that adopting this plan as it is would give the planning board authority over a lot of DOT operational efforts, which is something which they think is an incursion on their responsibilities and beyond the role of the land use agency. Planning staff points out that, of course, if the council adopts the plan, it's not the council telling DOT, it's not the planning board, it's the council. However, there are decisions that are made by the planning board. They're the final authority, particularly on site plan and preliminary plans, where the planning board would have the final authority. Nevertheless, all of that, in talking with staff, and in fact one of the comments they have in here, is that a lot of these operational improvements recommendations are not, in their minds, considered to be mandatory. So to sort of put a pin on that and put language in the plan which recognizes that, I'm recommending a sentence be added at the very beginning of the recommendations section on page 61, and you'll see this in the middle of page 3 of the packet. You would add this sentence referring to the recommendations, the 34 recommendations and the 110 key actions. These recommendations should be considered in further detail by multi-agency partnerships such as the Vision Zero Action Plan and the Climate Action Plan for further refinement and consideration. That would make this more of a multi-agency kind of implementation, and there may be some specific recommendations which might be modified by later information, by including more input from these other important documents and departments. So I guess that's, actually let me go to the next one and then ask your, see what you think about both of these changes, because the next section has to do with the cost of the plan, which I just referred to. There are at least 22 recommendations, or key actions, I should say, that recommend either a new program, new funding program, or expanding pretty extensively an existing program. And they're listed at the bottom of page 3 and top of page 4. And as pointed out, it's not likely, it really isn't possible, really, for this all to be affordable if you're carrying this all to the fullest extent. So I'm recommending basically an additional sentence right after the one I just finished recommending in the same paragraph, which is the middle of page 4, saying this: new and expanded programs contained among these recommendations will progress only as far as the competition for scarce capital and operating funds will allow. Again, it doesn't say no to any of these programs, it just puts a reality check on them, so that people reading the plan, and hopefully they'll pay attention to this paragraph, will recognize that these are all directions that we'd like to go, or at least most of them. There'll be other comments later which I'll recommend that we shouldn't go forward with, but most of them, yes, but that we're not likely to get to a full completion of them for a very long time, if at all. So I guess my first recommendation for you to if there's a response from the staffs or certainly from yourself, is to whether to include those two sentences in the first paragraph on page 61.
Sure. Thank you for those recommendations. First thing I would like to do is turn it over to Director Conklin to hear in real time his thoughts on how this document, this visionary document, can be incorporated, can be implemented, and done so in conjunction with the Department of Record.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for your invitation to be here today. I'll talk to these 2 points that Dr. Orland raised to begin with. First of all, this plan is a very challenging plan for our department to respond to, principally because we are accustomed to looking at plans that are focused primarily on physical changes, physical plans to the county, whether they be land use plans or other functional plans that specify particular types of facilities between particular origins and destinations. And this plan is very different than that, and the planning board and planning staff have done a good job of navigating through what's a very, very different plan. I'll also state that many of the recommendations, and here, as Dr. Orland mentioned, there are lots and lots of action items and recommendations. Many of them are things that we are in agreement, and we've had a good working conversation through this whole process with planning staff to try to tailor some of those to be in keeping with the plans and programs we have on our agenda. The area where it's challenging for us is that our operations are dictated not only by county policy, but we often need to respond to other changes in best practices promulgated by federal and state agencies. So sometimes what could be a recommendation in here in a master plan of a typical construct becomes problematic for implementation for us. And those timeframes for those changes are generally far shorter than we encounter in a long-range master plan for a defined area of the county or a large-scale system of the county. So this is very different than the bike plan. It's very different than the master plan of highways and transportation. It's very different than any sector plan that you would consider in those regards. So that's where this challenge emerges in terms of having some concern that we're going to be out of keeping with the plan because we're unable to implement those recommendations, either for fiscal, as Dr. Orland mentioned, or other regulatory reasons like a change in the ADA, a change in traffic signal parameters, a change in best practices for bike treatments, which all of these things change relatively dramatically over a long time horizon, not all that dramatically on a year-to-year basis. So that's the fundamental nature of the challenge that Dr. Orland was trying to describe. We would prefer this to be, as it's titled, the pedestrian plan and not the pedestrian master plan. We would prefer this to be a set of guides of things for us to explore over time and not so much a master plan in the context that has some degree of expectation that precisely what's written is what will be delivered. There are a lot of recommendations in here that are much more short-term than you would otherwise see in a master plan. The one that sticks in my mind from our conversation was affirming that EV charging in the public right-of-way won't impact the ability to implement sidewalk. The policies as they're written now don't limit that ability, so we feel that's affirmed. Those sort of things are the issues we've struggled with in dealing with this in the context of what the county normally frames as a master plan. So that's the short story on that. I hope that gave some clarity to what Dr. Orland was describing.
Yeah, it does. And I was going to equate it to the bicycle master plan. Can you just share how you view these as different? Because in many ways they are programs that are visionary, programs that we fully cannot afford, but are being used as roadmaps for infrastructure, right? For improving both bikeability, and here we want to improve walkability.
I mean, I can do that. I'd be happy for Mr. Ansbacher to comment on that too, since he's had involvement in both plans.
Sure.
The bike plan is a physical plan. It is suggesting, with some degree of variability from location to location, implementation of a particular type of bicycle facility from one place to another. Obviously, that gets refined during the design and development process of that. There are other recommendations for bicycle supportive programs and amenities in that plan. But by and large, it is a physical plan for the county with recommendations for very physical infrastructure conditions.
Sure.
This plan is not as directly physical as it is suggesting certain technology implementations, certain operational parameters, and very specific design recommendations for facilities. I'll pick on another one that sticks in my mind, the idea of whether or not traffic signal supports in certain locations are breakaway or not breakaway. That's a very specific design-related decision that falls under various federal and state safety regulations. There's some language in this packet to help adjust that recommendation, but that's very different than saying we want to have a protected bikeway or a side path in a particular location from a metro station to a newly emerging development area. So it's just a very different type of document than the other documents.
Understood. Mr. Ansbacher?
Yeah, David Ansbacher for the record. I think that's largely correct. A bicycle plan is much more of a physical infrastructure plan. I will note that there are a lot of, and a pedestrian master plan is largely a policy document. We make the assumption, and we have made the assumption through documents such as our Complete Streets Design Guide, where sidewalks and crosswalks will be built. This is about how, through policies, do you make walking better. I will note that the Bicycle Master Plan also has policy recommendations. I think one that we all think is very successful was what ultimately led to the Complete Streets Design Guide. There was a recommendation in there to do that as well. But frankly, without the policy recommendations in a pedestrian plan, what you're left with is goals, objectives, data describing existing conditions, and high-level policy statements. So as part of this review and as part of our contract with the Tool Design Group that does a lot of pedestrian bicycle work in the nation, we did do an evaluation of how other communities have developed their pedestrian master plans, and a lot of them do have operational and policy recommendations in them. Again, it is a master plan. It's largely recommendations, guidance for things to pursue.
Thank you both for that. Clearly the tussle is between aspiration and operation, but the nexus is making sure everybody is safe. And I think we need benchmarks, and we need some metrics to continue moving forward. And while I applaud all the work that the Department of Transportation has been doing in a number of areas, and next week, a week from tomorrow, the full council will be taking up the Safe Streets Act, which intertwines with all of this as well. But I'm more interested in getting things done, and however we can make this work to allow for flexibility within the department, which as the director noted, comes from sometimes Washington, D.C., and demands that flexibility. I'm open to massaging this so much as we continue moving forward and have something to judge it off of. I don't know if colleagues. So with that, I would support staff recommendation for the inclusion of that language.
I'm okay with the staff recommendation. Well, first I want to say thank you, since it's the first time I'm speaking to this, for everyone's input. This is I think probably today in our next work session, we're going to be talking about some of those areas where there may not be 100% agreement, but that loses the point that on probably 85 to 90% of this document, as Director Conklin said, there is a huge amount of agreement, and to have this packaged and all in one place, I just want to thank you all for the tremendous amount of work that went into this and taking back the community feedback you've received already. To the point that is before us now, the first sentence that was recommended, I'm fine with the way it's worded. I would like to offer to my colleagues, and we don't have to decide this today, but the way that it says new and expanded programs contained among these recommendations will progress only as far as the competition for scarce capital and operating funds will allow. Seems to be very limiting to me in the terms of where we want to be with this document. As we said, these are guidelines moving forward, and we know we may not be able to, or probably not accomplish everything. So I was wondering to keep the spirit of the language, but to slightly change it and say something along the lines of new and expanded programs will be evaluated and implemented by this and future councils, accounting for the fiscal realities at the time. Or we could say, or new and expanded programs will be considered by this and future councils in the context of the county's overall capital and operating funds, just to put it in context rather than basically saying we're going to be fighting over scarce resources, and chances are that none of this is happening. I think the way it was written, I don't think, Dr. Orland, that was necessarily the intent, but I would just ask for that bit of a tweak in that.
Can you restate the second?
Yeah, the second one was new and expanded programs will be considered by this and future councils in the context of the county's overall capital and operating funds. Yep.
Sounds good to me. Sure.
Yeah, I'm done. That I'm fine.
So
with
we
that,
all
yeah.
good with adopting that language for?
Can we just jump in just really
Oh, yeah.
quickly? We just had a slight comment on the first edition on, which is on, shown on page 3.
Yep.
That starts out, these recommendations should be considered in further detail by multi-agency partnerships such as. We want to make sure that that language is also more flexible, because these two sort of committees are not the only opportunities.
Yes.
So perhaps it could say something along the lines of these recommendations should be considered in further detail, comma, such as by multi-agency, et cetera, et cetera. So we can massage that too, if that makes sense to the committee.
Well, and PSTAB, which is not the correct, I did not pronounce that very long board, pedestrian.
PBTSAC.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that's not included in here either. So however it can be worded.
Correct. This is Eli Glacier for the record. I guess the logic behind expanding it is that you mentioned the Safe Streets Act that this committee has discussed and is working on legislating. I think we think implementation of this plan should be more open to other avenues beyond sort of the multi-agency process, like working through the council process or the initiative of lead agencies to pursue these recommendations of their own volition as well. So just flexibility would be very helpful.
If I could just indulge the committee just to make one brief response to what was just discussed about the scope of the plan. Just something to keep in mind, and I think, Eli certainly and Dave spoke to this, the pedestrian master plan, or just the overall comment about what a master plan is and what the scope is. A master plan could be very visionary, could be very high level, policy oriented, or it could be as detailed as essentially an action plan. All of that is possible under a master plan. Our general plan is a type of master plan, and obviously that's very high level policy. The bicycle master plan, does have very specific recommendations. Our area master plans go to the details of, this treatment should take place in these specific locations. The pedestrian master plan is really sort of, in my mind, kind of straddles sort of taking the Thrive Montgomery 2050 as a very high-level policy plan and going a step further, but not going all the way down to the details of saying exactly where necessarily every pedestrian improvement should take place, but rather laying out these are the type of high-level approaches we should take whenever there's an opportunity to make improvements to our transportation infrastructure. These are the approaches that we should follow. So that, to me, is really what the purpose of this plan is.
I appreciate that explanation. I've been using the word aspirational, but I know it's even more than that. And so it's a step down from, or a step forward, right, deeper than aspirational. That makes sense. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that was done. I think it's a great plan, and I think that it's aspirational plus, right? Aspirational 2.0. So my two primary issues are ones that we just spoke about, funding and scope, but I also want to add prioritization in there. And so I think that one of the issues with master plans and being on the side of the community, in most of my experience thus far has been as a community member working with master plans. And the frustration is always the expectation that the community has. It's a bright, shiny document when it's done, and everyone gets really excited about all the possibilities. So in a sector plan or a general plan, it's the new streets that are coming and the new schools that are coming and the parks and rec centers, and a lot of that doesn't come to fruition, so it creates a disappointment to the community, and it sets up an expectation that we're not doing our job because the master plan doesn't come to fruition. And I think that this is similar in that the funding, the reality of the funding, really exacerbates the idea that it's going to be a very long time to see everything happen in this plan, if at all. So I think having a statement is good. And I know that we're going to get really into the weeds on the recommendations and the action items. But I think that, and same thing with the scope, the issue of the verbs that are used in the action items, sometimes the verbs are consider or review or look at or partner with, and but then some are verbs like increase funding for. And I think that as we go through the individual items, I think those verbs really matter because they set up an expectation about what's going to happen. And so I just want to be conscious of that as we move forward. In terms of the scope and authority, I wasn't particularly looking at from the DOT perspective, but that's certainly an important point. But also from the state, the municipalities, and I think there's one or two that look at MCPS. And the way they're written, some of them say something like work with the state delegation to enact, but some basically say enact legislation. And I think that, again, when we look at these and look at the verbs that are used, because we are not going to enact state legislation, no matter how hard we try. We can work with the delegation, or we can support the proposed legislation. So I think that those two things are important. And then lastly is prioritization. So I understand the way that the sections are laid out, but we've got very big ideas that cost a lot of money right next to very small ideas or really low-hanging fruit, things that we're already working on. And I just I don't know how fruitful it would be, or would it even create more of an expectation if there is some prioritization. But those are just my global thoughts on this. Thank you.
Yeah, just offer a couple thoughts on the groups that are involved with this. In terms of the prioritization, a lot of these recommendations are items that would be implemented through the Vision Zero action plan, which is updated at least every 2 years. Wade, I think it's every 2 years. That is we try to tailor that to the funding that's available and the recommendations for the safety improvements that come from the systematic analysis and the crash records that we have. And I think you'd see these recommendations as they become key to the implementation of that program, implemented through that Vision Zero action plan. And I think that's one of the reasons the Vision Zero action plan was identified in the words that were recommended by Dr. Orland, similarly to the climate action plan, but a slightly lesser extent for this plan than maybe some others.
I think that is helpful. And clearly, I think this frames the conversation moving forward. We will be looking at the verbiage, the tense, and also looking at the cost, and also looking at the Department of Transportation to see how we make these things happen, and whether they are funded mandates, unfunded mandates, requirements, whatever they might be, or merely suggestions and recommendations. My colleague, I was remiss to not welcome Councilmember Albernaz. You're sitting all the way over there, so my periphery vision. But feel free to jump in at any point in time. I know you're here to talk about a few other things as well, but we welcome your thoughts. So where we are right now at the very beginning, there was agreement amongst the three of us to adopt Councilmember Stewart's language for the second half, and with Director Stern stating the more inclusive language, right? And so can you repeat what your suggestion was?
This is, let me go back. So this is the change that's at the page 3, where it says these recommendations should be considered in further detail, comma, such as by multi-agency partnerships, et cetera, et cetera.
Such as instead of by. Got it. Okay. I'm good with that, and we're good with that. Okay. Yeah. It's an easy one.
Okay. The next point I want to make is actually just highlight a very exhaustive testimony from Lloyd, and if I mispronounce his name, I apologize, Gertzi, who has a lot of things to say about the plan, some very specific and not particularly appropriate for the plan, but his main point is that within all the recommendations, he feels that the priority ought to be for pedestrian safety initiatives as opposed to things that will improve pedestrian comfort. Not that you wouldn't do pedestrian comfort, but if you have money, you start with pedestrian safety and then get to comfort later, if at all. And some things, of course, overlap. A lot of pedestrian safety improvements do improve pedestrian comfort. I sort of agree with that sentiment, except I would also include in that higher priority ADA improvements, because that's a civil rights issue. So I don't have recommendations for the plan. This is really more for legislative history or whatever, but I just wanted to get that thought out.
I appreciate Mr. Gertzi's comments. He corresponded with me in my office, and his years of professional experience have been very helpful.
Okay, with that, I'll start going through the key actions that DOT has comments about, and in the order that they appear in the plan. The first one is actually very technical. It's bottom page 4, key action B2B, which basically is saying that there should be evaluate passive detection to eliminate the need for pedestrians to press a button to safely cross the street in areas where pedestrian recall is not desirable. There's basically two ways that pedestrians can cross the street vis-a-vis the traffic signals there. One is that the signal actually has a built-in pedestrian phase, and it doesn't require any action on the part of the pedestrian except to follow the rule as to when they can cross and when they can't. That's called pedestrian recall. But there are some locations where the pedestrian activity is very, very small, mostly in sort of lower density suburban areas and rural areas where basically there's a push button. And so there's no cycle or no phase for the pedestrian to cross unless the pedestrian pushes a button, and then it builds in time for that pedestrian or group of pedestrians to cross. The plan recommends that instead of having push buttons, that there be another way of doing it in those situations, which is to have a sensor, which would identify if there's a pedestrian there ready to cross. Then it would build in a phase for the pedestrians doing that movement. TOT doesn't disagree with that, but they do add recommending a language sentence which says push buttons may still be provided to assist visually impaired users with navigating crossings. and the planning staff and their comments agreed with that. So given that there's agreement there, I'm recommending adding that sentence as well.
I agree with that. We all agree with that.
Okay. The next issue there is a disagreement on. The current Maryland law requires that if a pedestrian is in a crosswalk or entering a crosswalk, that traffic in the direction where the approaching the crosswalk has to stop, not yield, but actually stop. And in fact, not only that, but the adjacent lane in the opposite direction also has to stop. So it's a two-lane road, one in each direction, lanes both approaching that crosswalk and where the crosswalk would continue on the other side of the road, traffic has to stop in both places. The recommendation from the planning board is that if a pedestrian is basically at the curb waiting to cross, then the traffic has to stop. DOT objects to that. What they're saying is that you really don't know if the pedestrian is really there to cross or hanging out, or maybe they want to cross in the other direction. It's not as definitive what that pedestrian is or that person is doing. The staff points out that, or the plan points out that in Virginia they recently passed a law saying that it's not just in the crosswalk but at a crosswalk that this kind of thing would go into effect. But actually that's not the case. The Virginia law actually improves the situation in Virginia, but it's actually doesn't go quite as far as what it does in Maryland. It basically says that if, let's say you have a two-lane road, a four-lane road, 2 lanes in each direction, the lane that the pedestrian is in, the person now has to stop rather than yield. The next lane over, they don't have to. They can continue on going. Or once they've crossed the first lane and they're crossing now the second lane, the traffic in that first lane can go, rather than waiting there until the pedestrian has made the crossing entirely. So I'm basically agreeing with the DOT not to include this recommendation in the plan. I think it causes confusion. Drivers have enough to worry about as what's in the road. If they have to now pay attention to something which is not really in the direct line of sight, it can just really cause a lot of issues.
Mr. Glazer.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this point. I think where this recommendation came from in our 4+ years of conversations with people is the idea that the current law requires pedestrians to really put themselves in harm's way to by entering the street to require cars to stop for them. I think in practice it doesn't happen very often. People are scared to cross the street in a lot of places in Montgomery County, and I think the concern about interpretation of what waiting to cross the street at the curb means is I hear and I understand the concern. I think there are probably ways to write legislative language that are more clear about that. I think the maintenance of pedestrian right-of-way, thinking about this plan and this county and who has priority in the transportation system, the maintenance of that pedestrian right-of-way is well worth, I think, the marginal increase in sort of ambiguity and potential for rear-end crashes that would potentially result from sort of this sort of legislation. And then I'd also note, I thank Dr. Orland for bringing up the sort of erroneous Virginia precedent. Having done a little bit more research on this, if the council would like to substitute additional locations where this is the case, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Boulder, Colorado both have similar legislation about stopping or yielding for people waiting at the curb and not in the street. Thanks.
Thank you for those points, and this gets back to the point that Councilmember Balcom was making about the verbs, and here we're trying to determine what we would recommend the state pursue, right? Recognizing it's out of our purview, at least the state roads. I'll share with you that when I'm walking my dogs in the morning, either on one of the county's main roads, I think Franklin Avenue is a residential primary, which was not, I think, what we're talking about here. We're talking about state roads, or over by Colesville Road, both equidistant from me. There are times where I'll intend to cross the street, and one of my dogs will have something else they'd rather do, and I don't get to cross at that point, right? And cars will continue going by until I take an active step and look and make eye contact with the drivers to signal to them that I'm crossing. And so sometimes it gets dicey, particularly with dogs or kids who might not be following in tow. With regard to what the current law already is, that vehicles stop when pedestrians are in the crosswalk, we know that's just not happening. And I play Frogger all the time crossing largely Colesville Road. And I'll take a step, I'll take more steps, sometimes I'll already be in one lane, waiting for that second lane off the sidewalk, off the curb, to stop or slow down, and it's Frogger. And I'm a very observant and experienced pedestrian, and I know other people have different challenges, and this is complicated because we want the current law to be enforced, and so to expand the scope, I think would set a different expectation. Not to mention some of the other experiences that Director Orland mentioned. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. Councilman Balcom.
This is a more global thought. First off, I'm surprised that there are only, I'm sure there are others, but that we only know of 3 jurisdictions that do this. And so I think that it's probably more of an enforcement issue, that it's difficult to enforce the current law versus the future law. But I also think this comes back, and this is throughout the document, is education of the drivers. And I think that this is something where I don't think many drivers don't know what to do with a crosswalk anyway. They just assume that they have the right of way, period, and they just don't even pay attention to the crosswalks. So I think I agree with you in terms of we need to focus on enforcing the current law. And then also, this is a situation where I think would be interesting to have conversations with the state, but maybe pursue is the wrong word. So I'm comfortable with where staff came up with on this.
I think on this one I lean more towards the planning department's recommendation, and maybe pursue changing that to discuss because I don't think here as a body we're going to actually think about the language to go in state legislation that would be appropriate. But I think, Mr. Glazer, you said this in your remarks before about this one, and I think it is, what are we prioritizing? And if we said at the beginning the focus is prioritizing pedestrian safety, then having people in cars at least slow down and stop even if somebody is not crossing that street, but that becomes the reaction, because the reaction now, as we've all stated, is people don't even necessarily stop for people when they're in the crosswalk. And so, by pursuing or discussing potential modifications, can we have further conversations at the state level regarding this to see how we can encourage better behavior for people to be yielding to pedestrians to increase pedestrian safety, particularly at crosswalks?
I'll pick up on what you said, because I think that's a really important point. So when I'm driving, right, I talked about my experiences as a pedestrian, but when I'm driving, I will slow down. Ask my husband. Sometimes it annoys him, right, because he wants to get where we want to go as quickly as possible, which is how most people, humans tend to be. And I'll slow down, and there are more times than I wish that someone is in the crosswalk, I'm willing to slow down, they see I'm slowing down, and they will not cross because they still do not feel comfortable for whatever reason. They might only want to cross when there's no cars going on that road. But I am willingly slowing down, signaling them to wave, and they wave me off. And we're not getting into the state legislation here, but I'm curious how that would be enforced, right? If someone is waved, and they don't stop by the pedestrian. So, for all of this, I'm comfortable with the word pursue, going back to the verbiage here, because I think it does warrant more conversation, and quite frankly, maybe it warrants more conversation about safety enforcement of the already existing law, but I'm comfortable with the planning department's language as is. As are you?
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like this is one where, sorry. I agree more with staff on this, with our staff. That's lots of staff here. I think this is outside of where we should be right now. I would go with discuss a modification. I mean, are we really going to pursue? And so is this? So when we say pursue modification, that means that we, as a body, decide that this is going to go on our state agenda, and I just don't. Given everything else that we do with the state, I think this is one of those realistic issues where is this really going to make the list of what we are asking the state to do? Because we always have a long laundry list of what we would like to pursue at the state, but we have to prioritize that list, because if our list is too long, we're not going to get anything. So I think this is one of those situations where how realistic is it that we're going to, that we, the county council, because that's where it's going to come from, I would assume, is going to ask the state to do this?
If I could, so in the plan itself, each key action has a lead agency and supporting agencies associated with it. And this one specifically is the state delegation. And I understand that you obviously can't compel anyone to do anything at the state level. But I think the idea that if it was pursue or discuss, I think planning staff is agnostic on which of those words is the best. The intent is that sometime over the lifespan of this plan, which is the next several decades, this is something that would be advanced at the state level. So whatever verbiage is, I think, in that spirit is what we would support.
I'm good with a 2-1.
Okay, so 2-1.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat what the recommendation is?
So Councilmember Stewart and I support the planning, the original plan's language, and Councilmember Balcom supports staff recommendation.
I have to keep score here too, so I apologize for that.
Quite all right.
Okay, the next one is on top of page 6. This is actually fairly technical too. The recommendation here is to develop and implement a comprehensive pedestrian wayfinding system for the county, and in the narrative it points out that there's one being developed right now for bikeway wayfinding. Is under development by the planning department. DOT points out that this is actually a joint effort by the planning department and DOT, and so the language will be revised to say a similar effort to develop bikeway wayfinding is under development jointly by the planning department and DOT. I recommend concurring with that.
Without objection?
Okay.
Okay. The next one is the open parkways recommendation. We had more mail on this than anything else by far. And this has to do with the policies being in place now on Beach Drive and Sligo Creek Parkway. Currently on Sligo Creek Parkway, in the summers, it's closed to traffic between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. And in the fall and winter, it's 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. On Beach Drive, it's the same, except it's only on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. You have some folks who wrote in saying these roads should be closed to traffic all the time. You have others who say they should be open to traffic all the time. You have those who basically agree with the planning board's recommendation to basically keep in place the policy they have now. My recommendation was basically to concur with what's going on right now, except to possibly revisit the Friday closings on Sligo Creek Parkway, because at least on that particular day there may be an issue, maybe, I want to emphasize that, may not be, but it may be an issue that affects traffic congestion on neighboring roads, University Boulevard, Georgia Avenue, and that ought to be looked at in the update to the master plan for transitways and highways, which is under development right now, and it's going to come to the council next year, and you can make a final decision about that next year. But in the meantime, keep it closed to traffic on Fridays on Sligo Creek Parkway. Councilmember Albornoz has recommended that the plan basically take this recommendation out of the plan. In other words, the plan would not have any specific guidance about whether how to use these roads. But
real quick, Dr. Orland, can you just restate again the days for Beach Drive and for Sligo that are currently closed?
Beach Drive is Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the spring and summer, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. in fall and winter. Sligo Creek Parkway, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the summer, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the winter.
And I see we're joined by Director Riley. I don't know who to address the question to, but why would those two roads have different days, particularly the Fridays, for being closed when one's closed on Fridays and one is not?
Thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak today. Mike Riley, Director of Parks. On the beach, on all the three parkways, when we opened them up in April 2020, it's been no secret I'm a big fan of those open parkways. I've talked to you in each semi-annual since we've had them with pictures and data and numbers of users. But on all of them, we've had unintended consequences. As popular as they've been, with over 1,000, sometimes 2,000 users per day, we had unintended consequences on each of them, mostly related to cut-through traffic. On Beach Drive in particular, there was cut-through traffic on a parallel street off Connecticut Avenue called Culver Avenue. We worked with DOT and we did traffic counts. And at that point in time, we decided that Fridays were the main problem, being a work day with AM and PM rush hours. And we decided that we would discontinue the Friday on Beach Drive due to workday traffic and continue on Saturdays and Sundays. Sligo, there is no analogy with a parallel cut-through problem, so we did not change that.
Would it be simpler to have a weekend policy for all of our similar roads that engage in this program?
Right now, as you know, Little Falls is a little bit of an anomaly on its own track, so they're all three different. They're all three in a different status right now. Sligo is the one that seems to generate the least amount of concern as it is. It seems to be working. It seems to be popular. I'm not getting concerns and complaints. Beach, we have the issue on Culver, which I'm happy to talk about how we can mitigate that going forward. And then Little Falls, of course, will be decided on a separate track. What do I say?
Sligo is very popular. I happen to be walking on Sligo this Saturday with Congressman Raskin, with about 100 of our neighbors. Your Councilmember Balcom's staff was there. Sorry. Yes, there you go. Thank you. Councilmember Stewart's staff was there, and it was wonderful. And I do that regularly. And I have also walked on Beach Drive, not as frequently because it's on the other side of town. But I think they're beneficial programs. And the one thing before I open up to colleagues and Councilmember Albornoz is that when the pandemic first started and we started implementing these programs, we were acknowledging that people needed to be outside and that these roads could be used for other purposes, recreational, physical health, mental health, environmental. And I have tried to hold firm that we do not have to go back to a pre-COVID era, and that these roads are being used. And I understand that there are some adverse effects, and I understand that. And I've read all my email, and I speak to residents regularly. But when we look at the situation, and I think we try to balance the need for people to enjoy their physical environment and enjoy their neighborhoods for the weekend, I think that provides much more benefit than the alternative. And so the one question I have is whether or not it needs to be codified in this document. I'm not sure. What we have been doing recently is allowing the Parks Department to make those decisions, and whether, going back to the central question at the very beginning of whether a planning document should dictate what another agency does, remains an open question. But I would like to see this program continue. Before I turn it over to Councilmember Albornoz, any other committee?
Yeah. Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the Parks Department for the excellent work, especially during COVID. The Open Parkways program has been, hugely successful for residents, and it's a place where they can exercise, play, relax, and just be. And specifically, I can say Sligo was enormously helpful during COVID. Being the mayor in the city that has much of Sligo, those paths got so crowded with people, but when we were able to open up the parkway, it was very successful. It was not without consequences, though. I will say on streets, and we had to work with State Highway and actually put in place a stop sign on Carroll and Lincoln because of some of the cut-through traffic. Now, we were able to do it, and I had been advocating for that stop sign for almost a decade, so I was fine with it, and we were able to work it out. But I do want to say that it has been a great program, and I'm very supportive of it. After we speak, we can turn it over to Councilmember Albornoz, who has been working specifically on this section of Beach Drive with the neighbors there. But I do, like the council president said, have questions about whether or not this needs to be codified here in our master plan, particularly the piece on Beach Drive, because my understanding is that Parks is working with the Department of Transportation, looking at traffic mitigation from multiple sources on this area, and that I think being able to have that work move forward in that context is a good direction forward. In addition, looking at the packet and the comments from the Department of Transportation, when appropriate, I would also like to hear from Director Conklin and his thoughts from the Department of Transportation on this stretch, particularly of Beach Drive, and the inclusion in the master plan.
Oh, yes.
Happy to share our perspective on this. We have been collaborating with Director Riley on the traffic management issues for this and other parkways as they've been opened and closed on different days of the week. You can probably guess my opinion, which is that the Parks Director should retain the ability to make the decisions he sees fit for the operation, or he, or maybe later she, because I know Mike Riley won't always be the Parks Director, makes on any day of the week for these decisions based on the circumstances in front of them. So much like the county would close a road if there's a purpose for closing that road, I think the Parks Director should retain that authority as well. Those closures, like if it's a closure of any other public road, require attention to detour details and notification details and other information, so that we don't have people ending up in a place where they don't know what to do and end up in a neighborhood street. But otherwise, I think that it is perfectly appropriate for that discretion to remain with the management agency that controls the road.
Thank you. So, yeah, this is the largest amount of mail that we've received on this plan. Is this specific action item, and the letters that stuck with me, resonated with me, was the impact of cut-through traffic on a Saturday morning, so on the weekend. So, of course, weekend traffic is much lower for the Parkway. So, from the Parkway's perspective, closing it, it's much less impact. But for the neighboring community, it's significantly higher traffic than would normally happen on the weekend. So that did resonate with me. But overall, I feel like we talked at the beginning about how this plan is a very different plan than other master plans, that in that they don't have specific specific projects in a specific place, and this seems to go against that grain. So I would, it's not my geographic area. I haven't used the parkways like my colleagues have, so I can't speak to that. But I've just questioned whether this should be in this document, given that the Parks Department has the overall authority and working with the Department of Transportation to make the decision. So that's where I would end up.
Okay. You are now up, Councilmember Almanas.
Thank you, Mr.
You know
President.
this, you know
and
this
Chair.
neighborhood well.
Yes, absolutely. And let me just say up front how impressed I am how you've managed this very difficult conversation, and how impressed I am with this plan. This does represent tremendous progress, and I think whatever form it ultimately takes represents really an important step forward for our community as a whole, that especially takes into account pedestrian challenges, which is a public health issue, as the President eloquently noted at the beginning of this session. So I will limit my comments, and I promise to try and keep this as tight as possible, specifically to Beach Drive, although I have had the opportunity to participate in all 3 parkways closures and can speak in the first person about the tremendous benefit it has provided me, my family, my immediate neighbors and friends and colleagues that lived adjacent to those communities. And it has been an unmitigated success from the perspective of opening up our spectacular parks and providing more respite and mental health opportunities for our residents. I know kids that have now learned how to ride their bikes for the first time on Beach Drive and never would have had that opportunity had it not been for the tremendously, the foresight of the Parks Department led by Mike and his team. That said, as Mike noted, there are unintended consequences, and on Beach Drive in particular, I want to provide just a little bit more context. So that stretch of our community has grown precipitously in its local traffic, in part because Walter Reed has significantly expanded its campus in the last 5 years. And NIH has and continues to remain one of the largest workforce providers in the entire region. We've also seen that the exit onto the Beltway going north on Connecticut is the Beach Drive is the last street that you can exit or access before you get to that particular entrance or exit off of the Beltway. And unfortunately, that stretch of the Beltway appears to be where a lot of 18-wheelers go to die, because there is tremendous traffic and congestion that occurs on a regularly frequent basis in that particular part of 495, and there's a cascading impact on local communities and traffic that sometimes backs up people trying to get onto 495. So when you add all of those things together, on a good day, there's a lot of cut-through traffic through that community in particular that is significantly and obviously exacerbated on Saturdays and Sundays when there's a closure. Now, I think the closure has benefited so many, but there are very reasonable traffic mitigation plans that have not yet taken effect. And Director Riley noted, and I do give him and his staff a lot of credit because they've been very responsive to my team and to the community. And there is a meeting being planned in the very near future in which we're inviting representatives of DOT, Councilmember Stewart's office and my office, as well as members of the community, to discuss in real time what some of those potential traffic mitigations might be. But in light of this being, frankly, an operational issue, I don't think it's appropriate to put it in this master plan, because this would cut off at the knees future directors of parks, future residents of that community, when things change on the ground or information changes on the ground. There's a great deal of development going into Kensington right now. And so that is going to lead to even more local traffic in that particular part of our community. And I have seen and witnessed situations in which people cannot get out of their driveways because of the amount of cars on a Saturday or Sunday that are going through. And there are parents who feel very anxious and cautious about allowing their children to be able to ride their bikes on Saturdays and Sundays because of the traffic that's coming through. I think that once we implement those traffic mitigation plans, it will improve, and there is a sweet spot that should be negotiated between the Parks Department and the community to alleviate their concerns, but continue to take advantage of this tremendous asset that we've developed. But we should allow the Parks Department to have those discussions and not codify in a plan in perpetuity an issue that could change at any given moment over time. So I strongly support not putting it in the plan, continuing to have the closure, but allowing the Parks Department to do what they do so well in so many instances and work something out that lifts all boats.
Thank you for that, for your comments and sharing your concerns, and for the work that you and the district council member, our council member, we are her constituents as well, will be doing on that effort. And you know, there's an aspect here that has not been noted, and so I'll do so. What the planning board has, what the planning department has suggested has been approved by the planning board, which also oversees the Parks Department. And so there is a nexus here, and so ultimately is the planning board and the people the council, put on the planning board who will make this decision, whether it is in perpetuity or whether it changes for any external reason, as has been noted. I will once again say I strongly support the program. I have walked on all of the roads over the years and recent months, but I ultimately believe that it doesn't need to be codified in here, because the planning board, which oversees these two departments, can make these decisions at any time it wants.
No, I concur with the direction that the committee is going in. I thank Councilmember Albanaz, who has been working on this issue, working with residents for a while, and really just again want to say thank you to the planning department staff, and particularly to the Parks Department for all their hard work on this and working with members of the community. And I just agree with the Council President.
Great. It's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Albanaz.
Okay, so the recommendation is to delete this recommendation from the plan, but to continue to work on the issue.
Correct.
All right. Okay, near the bottom on page 6, the next is to, more or less technical again. This recommendation is to fund off-site pedestrian bicycle access improvements to transit stations as part of the main capital project or through a parallel effort. DOT's comment is they think this is a little bit vague, particularly having to do with the definition of off-site. And so the planning staff is recommending adding this sentence. Off-site is defined as improvements that are not directly connected to the transit station, but fill a gap within the transit station walkshed. The transit station walkshed should be defined as part of the initial planning and design process for the capital project. Council staff concurs with that.
Didn't we have this, or isn't this somewhat tied to what we used to call the growth and infrastructure policy as well? Aren't some of those decisions made at that point in time about what amenities, if I can call it that, need to be within proximity of areas? Am I conflating?
There is a requirement to meet. There's a pedestrian test,
Yeah.
which looks at the pedestrian level of comfort, which is also described in the appendices to the plan.
And requirements for either bicycle usage or storage, or Mr. Sartori is itching to get in.
Yeah, I can jump
Sorry,
in. No, that's correct. The growth and infrastructure policy does look at off-site improvements as part of regulatory development projects to address the impacts. I think this recommendation is focused on when you build, say, for example, a transit project, make sure that you're also building the infrastructure to support people walking and bicycling to those stations.
Got it.
So it's a little bit different.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So does the committee concur with this language, or?
If I could offer something on
Sure.
this.
No.
This language is really constraining the council's authority more than anything else. I mean, when we do these projects, we develop plans to address these issues. The question is what is affordable within those projects at that time. And you'll remember in the US 29 project, for example, the BRT project that was implemented back in 2021 when it opened, there were a whole host of pedestrian and bicycle amenities identified that were needed to support the walk sheds to that project. The cost of those improvements was 3-4 times the cost of the BRT themselves, and the council set up a separate program to implement those projects, but this language is suggesting that those projects should all be implemented with the scope of the primary project, which would mean we still wouldn't have the transit improvements and the immediate station area improvements that were built there if we took that approach, because we would have been looking to fund a $250 million project instead of a $50 million project at the time.
And this goes back to, again, that original question of the use of the verb fund, right? Is it a suggestion? Is it a directive? As the council has, final budgetary authority, what are we to do with a self-inflicted rule, right? Fair questions.
Sorry, no. I have a big question mark next to this one. No. I'd like to hear from Dr. Orland. I have a big question mark over this because I just don't have experience with this.
Well, I think Councilmember Stewart's recommended change the language on page 4 and the original language as well sort of addresses that. It still says new and expanded programs contained will be considered in the context of future CIPs. I mean, it's just that means that it isn't automatically funded fully. It competes with everything else.
I think it's probably also worth noting that it doesn't say fund fully, it just says fund, and I think the scope of the potential improvements would be defined in the walk shed that's created as part of the capital project. I think we have a real problem as we build out this transit network if we're not making the necessary bicycle and pedestrian connections to get people to the stations themselves. So that's the problem this is attempting to solve, and sort of the ability for the council to fund or the extent of the funding is obviously at your discretion, but it's just the idea that we got to make these connections because we're not going to get the full value of the investment if we don't do that.
So thank you. The light bulb came on. So this is a good example of the use of the verb fund, and then also the leads, because in looking at the consistency of items, very often if funding is involved, county council is considered to be a critical lead on that. It's included. And if we look at, I know we're not talking about B7, B7F, but county council is listed on that when we're talking about offering monetary support. This one is funding this improvement, but there's not consistency in, whether the county council's in there. So, and specifically saying fund, it feels very much like a directive. But what is more interesting to me is what you just said, that the whole point of this is if we have improvements to transit stations, so to me it's not necessarily the fund verb, but the point of we need to make sure that whatever improvements we make to transit stations, we have the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure in place. So to me it would be more like ensure off-site pedestrian and bicycle access improvements to transit stations are part of the project. To me, that is the crux of this item.
And for that to happen,
for any of it to happen, right? We need the money, but when I see the word fund this, it just feels.
So to me, as I said in my opening comment, we need benchmarks to show our success and our efforts. And this plan and this verbiage, we have no one to hold. We have only ourselves to hold account. And as much funding or lack of funding that might be provided, whether it's in the capital budget or in the general operating for certain programs, that is for us to decide. And when progress is being made or not being made, we can directly measure that. And that's how I view this document.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Balcom, because I was trying to also connect some dots here, and I'm wondering if the word, if the planning department staff would be okay with the word ensure, and something that Councilmember Balcom said made me think that, and looking at the last sentence of this one, it says non-motorized access should be a higher priority than motorized access. To me, that's a really important piece of this, and again, going back to what is our goal with this overall plan, is not to lose that emphasis. That as we are planning, as we are moving forward, and that includes many different departments, that front and center is what are we prioritizing here when it comes to BRT, Purple Line, and all of these things. And so I'd be comfortable with ensure, because I think the emphasis, this is where the emphasis is on prioritizing non-motorized access.
We're fine with that language.
So say that one more time.
It basically just changes fund to ensure. It's Councilmember Balcom's, yeah.
Good.
Ensure is actually a stronger directive than fund. You recognize that?
Director Conklin, did we just actually give you a heart attack?
It just
You didn't give me a heart
feels
attack.
better.
You give yourself a heart attack. For me, I reviewed contract language too long, and I always was directed to cross out the word ensure in any contract, even if you had every intention of doing it. But what I would suggest is the word include would maybe give you more coverage for what that scope is, rather than fund, which is fund whatever we said was the maximum needed, is how one person could read that. Include means maybe a portion of the identified need is something you're able to fund. Ensure, I think, is the strongest of those three options, but
I'm good with
I am not
include.
an English major.
That works for me.
Yeah.
I really, I have not gone to thesaurus.com. I'm not sure there's really a difference between them. They're making sure we get things done, and that's all I care about, so I'll support that. That's unanimous.
So where are we? Ensure, include, fund, include. Okay, and that's unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. All right, bottom page 6, development approach to achieve increased county control over state highways and town centers along Thrive growth corridors. The original idea was that these roads would be transferred from the state to the county. Now the plan recommendation, though, is it came from the planning board, says to basically have it so that the roads remain state roads in terms of the state being responsible to maintain and operate them, but that they follow all the rules that are or the guidance that's in the pedestrian master plan, the bikeway master plan, the complete streets design guide. The state highway administrations, they have made a lot of strides in this area over particularly the last decade to head in this direction, and the county should press for even more progress. Their state highway is very unlikely to cede control over their roads, even for the kinds of things we're talking about here, unless they want to do it. And so what I'm recommending instead is something that actually the Greater Only Civic Association is also preferring as an approach, to change the title of it to say, encourage the State Highway Administration to adopt designs and policies on state roads in downtowns, town centers, and Thrive Montgomery 2050 growth corridors that are consistent with the Complete Streets Design Guidelines, the Bicycle Master Plan, and this Pedestrian Master Plan. And further, I'm recommending that any notion of transfers be any language about transfers be eliminated from the plan. A transfer requires a huge amount of additional cost and liability unless there's a corresponding transfer of county roads to the state. Over the time, there has been several transfers have taken place. Usually a higher function road that the county is operating will go to the state, and a lot of these lower function roads, more local roads that happen to be state highways, would be transferred to the county. And both sides sort of look at the overall operating costs of taking on those responsibilities and yielding the responsibilities, and if they come out pretty close to being a wash, then the transfer happens. For the county, just I think we're all sort of agreeing that the transfers really shouldn't happen. But I think it's too strong to say that the state that we have the state actually do the policies that we do. We should basically encourage them and try to get them to the point where they are actually wanting to do what we would have them do. So that's my recommendation.
So this is complicated, and how did we determine the $94 million?
Sorry, what?
How did you determine the $94 million cost annually?
Mr. Bossi did that calculation, so I'm happy for him to share the methodology. I'll let you know that it doesn't include the full extent of the possible liabilities and facility and staffing needs, nor does it account for actually modifying any of those facilities to meet the intention of this recommendation.
Yes, Andrew Bossi, Montgomery County DOT. It basically is unit costs across the lane mileage of state highways throughout the county. So there's two costs. You have the cost for the road lane miles themselves, as well as the sidewalks that might be on each side. It is a conservative number that's in there because it's estimating the full extent of state highways in the county, even though the recommendation does tailor it to leave downtowns, town centers, and growth corridors. But just in the time we didn't have the time to narrow it down specifically to those geographies. But it's still going to be a pretty substantial number. There would potentially be at least some offset if funding formula changed, but it's also difficult to estimate how much that would be. Probably wouldn't be a complete one-to-one match.
So I appreciate the quick math that you did, and by your own calculation, a conservative estimate. The reason I said it's complicated is because I knew that math is complicated, and I think to make a decision like this or make a request like this without knowing all of that mathematic and tax trade-offs, I think is hard. And quite frankly, even if we had $94 million, even if we had it, that could go a long way on streets that the county controls. Think of all the investment and improvement that we could do, let alone leaving SHA or having separate conversations with SHA. So I think what the Greater Olney Civic Association and staff are recommending makes sense. We have some incredible advocates in Annapolis who continue doing this work throughout the county, state delegates and senators, and now we have, I will say, a more friendly face in SHA and DOT as well. And so I think we could restart some of these conversations, and I'm optimistic about that.
Great. I like both. I like the addition of what the Olney Civic Association suggests, but I also like where the planning department has said in the master plan is the start of a conversation that needs to happen to make this recommendation a reality. So I like the idea that we're going to start a conversation or have a conversation about the county potentially taking over some state highways. And so I wouldn't want to lose that. If there is a way to potentially combine these two thoughts, I think that would be optimal. I wouldn't want to completely take off the table having in here a conversation about the county taking over some state highways.
If I may, this recommendation was one of the most popular recommendations in the pedestrian master plan. We think it's one of the most important recommendations in the plan, really, as it relates to the future of the county and thinking about the visionary nature of this plan and really what needs to be changed in our downtowns and town centers and along our transit and growth corridors, as if we're going to achieve Vision Zero, if we're going to implement the climate action plan, if we're going to create the 15-minute communities that are envisioned in Thrive Montgomery 2050. And we think that staff's proposed recommendation to encourage SHA to adopt these designs is really what we're doing already today. The progress that SHA is making is real, and a lot of that is because of pressure from our office, from Montgomery County DOT, and from others, but it's not enough. I think what we see is that SHA is years behind the county in its policies in improving safety and how it sort of views what roads are for. And I think we have opportunities to speed up projects like bus rapid transit, like our multimodal efforts, thinking about development review, to streamline our development review process by making it easier to build and change these roadways, either through public means or private means. So the recommendation is to develop an approach to achieve increased control. I don't think we presuppose what that would look like. I think it's to start that conversation that Councilmember Stewart alluded to. So that's
so if I could real quick, so starting the conversation basically says, starting the conversation, which is a continuation of the conversation, right? And I remember first getting here, 4 or 5 years ago, and one of the first conversations I had was with then SHA Administrator Greg Slater, who was about to share the different zones that they were coming up with throughout the state, which was a recognition, as you just noted, of the pressure and advocacy that we in Montgomery County had been applying, recognizing we are not the same jurisdiction and our roads should not be treated the same as other counties to the east or to the west. But I'm not sure saying that we're just going to take over and buy the roads from the state is necessarily the tactic that gets anybody's attention. Important because they have not been as responsive as we need, and I'm just trying to get us to a place where we make progress without spending $94 million as a conservative estimate.
If I could speak to this for just a moment, because this is a recommendation that from time to time I entertain as an idea in my head, and it's usually at a time when I'm very frustrated with a very particular situation. Those vary from time to time.
Which is probably very similar to this,
Very
right?
similar.
Because we want things to be better, and it's out of frustration. I get it.
And then I come back to the situation that this is an agency that has a budget that is many, many tens of times what our budget is. It's an agency that's part of a state that has a whole different financial capacity that we do. And I get very afraid that we cut ourselves off from what could be a very effective partnership with an agency that has gone from really quite bad in this arena of pedestrian bike facilities to helpful in some regards. And in fact, we are working right now on a new federal grant application that MDOT-SHA has decided to take the lead on, specifically for pedestrian, bike, and walkability improvements in one of our business districts. And in this CTP, it's the very first CTP where they're going to have a Vision Zero focused program, which we've been advocating for a few cycles. So I just see this as an action that it's a feeling that I often have, but it's an action that I have recognized each time I have that feeling that's probably not the way to go. And I felt that council staff's recommendation here actually got a lot of what we really need to do, which is get our partnership where it needs to be with an agency that we need to see as a partner to implement this rather as somebody who's preventing us from achieving our goals. And yes, from time to time they do prevent us from achieving our goals. And there are times where we may need to work with them to take over a state facility. We have an ongoing conversation about a transfer of a state road to the county right now related to something that they've constructed. So these happen, but I think they're better when they happen in limited circumstance with a very specific need, rather than the idea that we're getting ourselves out of a problem that, yes, sometimes we have, but that problem may go away through better cooperation with our partner.
May I make a suggestion just to kind of see if we can get to a...
And not to interrupt you, but it is 3 o'clock, so we'll make this the last decision point for the afternoon.
Just based off of the discussion so far, just maybe one suggestion, and this kind of goes back to what Council Member Stewart was alluding to. In terms of the council staff recommended language, I think part of what we want to make sure is that the plan speaks to this issue in general, even if the committee decides to take out the language related to a transfer. But I think the other sort of what I see that's a little bit missing from this is that it's not just about SHA adopting the policies and practices, which we certainly want them to do, but perhaps we can add some additional language that also speaks to, and pursuing other resources or other interventions to ensure that the state roads, help facilitate pedestrian safety, just to give us some other options. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah.
And that could, if there was a different feeling in the future with other parties and there was a sense of, yes, we want to take over the roads, that could be folded into that, but at least it doesn't cut off other options.
Well, and that can be pursued outside of this, right? Depending on who the council is, who's in the General Assembly, and who's in the governor's mansion. That's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yes, I agree with that. In terms of, we're talking about the realistic aspect of the plan, and I think that This might even, putting this out may even make us take a step back in the progress that we're trying to make with the state. So I agree with where we ended up, just noting that it's not just the key action, but also just the recommendation of the B10 that needs to change also. Because in the staff packet, I think it was just the specific, the action item versus the entire section B10.
So does the committee have language that it wants to do? Or?
Well, so rather than trying to wordsmith this, let's put a pause on it, and we can come up with that language
We'll come back to it.
for the next work session. But I think we're all landing in the right place. And again, that frustration, the word that was used, I had that frustration when drafting the Safe Streets Act, because trying to force legislative and regulatory change on the state highways was, we couldn't do it. And so even feeling constrained in what we can do is frustrating, but we're going to channel that frustration into a positive way, into a positive relationship with SHA, and we'll come back in a week or two. Is it 2 weeks? Next time we come back. Next week. Thank you, everybody. Very good work session. Got halfway through. And look forward to continuing that conversation. While our DOT and planning staff are finishing up, we'll take a 5-minute break, and I'll invite Purple Line team and State Department of Transportation to come on up and get comfy, and we'll be right back. Okay. And we are back, and we have the Purple Line team in front of us, so welcome. Before I turn it over to you for your presentation, I'll say this conversation is probably one of the most important conversations that I have throughout the year and throughout the years. Living in the community that has the Purple Line crossing through it, driving on the streets where the Purple Line will be, and hearing from residents every day about asking me about the project. Very excited about it, but at times dismayed by the progress or lack thereof. But we know that once it is up and running, it is going to help people get to their jobs, get to centers of higher education. It will be a catalyst for economic development and for environmental sustainability as well. And so we keep holding on to the excitement, but have to keep having conversations about the day-to-day. And so I appreciate you all taking time to join us this afternoon to give us an update. I know my colleagues and I will have a lot of very detailed questions. And so it is 3:10 now. I'll be checking the time and want you just to be mindful of that as well, because a lot of constituents have spoken with us and asked very detailed questions. And so with that, I'll say, do colleagues have any opening comments? No. Okay. And with that, Dr. Orland, or should we just turn it over?
Sure. This is a semi-annual briefing. We'll have the next one. Last one was in March. The next one will probably be next March. And we have with us today the new management team with NMTA, and Ray Biggs, who's the project director, will introduce the folks. We also have Doran Basso as the Chief Executive Officer of the concessionaire, Purple Line Transit Partners, and Hugo Fronteroy, who's the project executive for Maryland Transit Solutions, who's responsible for building the project. So with that, they have a PowerPoint presentation, and there are certain also slides that Councilmember Stewart has provided that they've asked the state and concessionaire to respond to. We'll get to those and go from there. So I think I just turn it over to Ray for introductions and move on from there. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Glenn. So we can go to the next slide. So Glenn already introduced ourselves, but I'll just go through it really quickly. My name is Ray Biggs. I'm the project director for Maryland Transit Administration for the Purple Line. We have Doran Basso, the CEO for Purple Line Transit Partners. We have Hugo Fronteroy, the project executive for Maryland Transit Solutions. And we make up the P3 for the Purple Line. New to the team, we have brought on a deputy project director to the Maryland Transit Administration, Alexa Heydrich. She has been with us a little bit over a month. And we also have Catherine Lamb, who is our Director of Communications, who has joined us here today too, as part of the Maryland Transit Administration team. All right. Okay. To just refresh your memories about how the structure is set up, we have MTA, Maryland Transit Administration, is the owner. We have Purple Line Transit Partners, who is our concessionaire. And then it breaks out into Maryland Transit Solutions, who is our contractor that's building the project, with CAV, who is assembling our vehicles, and Atkins, the designer. And then we'll have Purple Line Transit operators who will operate the system for us once it's in revenue service. Now, over the summer, we extended out the revenue service date back in July. There was a BPW we got the approval to move forward with, and that moved our revenue service date out to spring of 2027. That also pushed out the system-wide testing into 2026, but kept almost everything else in place as is. So this reflects the updated schedule of where we currently are with the revenue service date. One thing that we have mentioned is that this is the current, and we may have some more adjustments to it, but we'll be sure to be transparent and communicate about that as we continue going forward.
I'll just give the quick overview of project status at a very high level. We're more than halfway through. We're calling it 57%. Along the alignment, you'll see more than 60 active construction sites, just shy of 1,000 workers, just a tremendous amount of progress. More than half our stations now under construction. At one of our stations, we have the, what do you call the roof, the overhead. It's beginning to look like a real station. So that's really exciting for us. Of underground utility relocations, 98%, not including sewer. We still have quite a lot of drainage work to do. We're over halfway though, and that's good. Getting that work in the ground is really important to us. There's a lot of unknowns underground. We feel really confident and comfortable making progress above ground, kind of when we can control the controllables. And more than 55% of overhead catenary pole foundations. So there's well over 1,000 of these. It's the little circular concrete cylinder there you can see sticking up out of the ground near the track. That's going to hold our catenary system. So there are very large drill rigs going and drilling all these foundations to secure our overhead catenary systems. It's a big piece of the work and very important to us. Sticking with power, 3 out of our 10 traction power substations have been delivered this year, with 2 more expected before the end of the year. So that'll be half of our traction power substations. Again, very important to getting the track powered up and ready to move trains. And in terms of the trains, we have 26 of the 28 light rail vehicles, we call them, LRVs for short, which are ready to go up in New York. And we, as you saw on Ray's slide, we hope to debut those early next year, bring them down to the project site here locally. So for more details, I'll turn it over to Ugo.
In the next slides, if I go through too much detail and you prefer me to go faster, just let me know. As you all know, the Bethesda station will connect the Bethesda Purple Line station, the Red Line station, and Elm Street and Elm property with high-speed elevators. The first 120 feet have already been excavated, and we are currently blasting at the top head of the cavern, which is around 30 feet above the bottom of the shaft. Our blasting cycle is around 2 blasts per week, which will allow to complete the excavation of the top heading of the cavern in around March, April. Then we'll proceed with the construction of the roof, which means we'll stop of rock excavation for some time, and we will proceed after the roof is installed with the remaining of the excavation of the shaft and the cavern. Next slide, please. In the Chevy Chase area, we have seen some changes on top of Connecticut Avenue. Actually, during this 2023, we poured both LRV and CCT bridges over Connecticut, which allow us to start also Chevy Chase Station. In the picture, you can see some of the foundations actually installed. Catenary foundations have also been completed in this area, and although you cannot see them, or we cannot see them, the catenary poles, most of them are already fabricated, and we have them stored pending to be installed. So we expect also to see important changes in segment 1. One of them is to be able to start seeing track crews, track ballast crews in this area, probably before the end of the year.
Can you go back one time?
Yeah.
Can you go back to Jones Mill?
So another work that we have been doing also is noise walls. We have completed approximately 40% of them. And more or less around 35–40% of all the walls, most of them are MSC walls, also in this segment 1. If we go to Jones Mill Road, we are good here. We already moved the water and gas lines, and we are currently planning to complete the flat work and road work for this phase 1, and open this phase 1 and start phase 2 at the end of this year. In this area, we are going back to Little'sville. We are good. Perfect. So in Little'sville area, We are currently proceeding with the MSC walls. All of the soldier pile walls in the area has already been completed. And we are also working at Rock Creek area. Actually, we are installing the soil nails that we need to stabilize the bank of the Rock Creek per design. Also, the abutments of the CCT trail on top of the Rock Creek have already been completed, and we are currently constructing the reverse steel truss deck of the bridge in a facility, and we expect to install it also around early next year. As you can see in the picture, these are the foundations for Laytonsville Station, which is one of the 11 stations that we are currently working on. A Talbot Avenue Bridge deck was poured around 3 months ago, and in the last 3 months we have been working intensively on walls. So we are currently focusing on completing the parapets, the concrete barriers, other flat work and pavement, with the goal to open Talbot Avenue Bridge at the end of this year. This work was also done in coordination with the MTA, PLTP, MTS, and Montgomery County Public Schools, especially Rosemary School. We all have been working hard at this area, and we complied with the deadlines that we committed with Rosemary School. Walls next to the school have been erected, sidewalks have been rebuilt, and the requested temporary concrete stairs have been finalized. Silver Spring Bridge flyover seats 7 and 8 have been poured, and we are planning to pour spans 4 and 5 in the next 2 weeks. This picture is a bit old. If we have a new one, we would see all the rebar already installed. We expect to have the remaining spans 1 and 2 also before the end of the year, and span 3 early 2024. In July, we started also work on the Silver Spring Transit Center Station, which is placed on top of the span seats 7 and 8 that have been poured. We also started demolition at the existing mezzanine, and such demolition work will be completed at the end of the year, and that will allow the start of the construction of the new mezzanine, which is planned for next year. Bonifant area, we are paying a significant attention. Both communication and construction departments are well engaged, and this is also an area where we are currently resuming work, especially on the catenary pole foundations, which is a work that you will see marked. We already removed the paving, and we expect to start drilling, and as soon as we drill, we fill it as well next week. If we go to the next slide, we're going to jump to Wayne Avenue. It's also an area with intense utility and storm water work, which has been completed in some sections, allowing the start of roadworks and flatworks necessary for widening Wayne Avenue. The Purple Line team, together with Montgomery Public Schools and Silver Spring International Middle School, have been coordinating during this summer in order to advance work during the months where the school was closed. Actually, we installed walls in the area, as we can see in the pictures, sidewalks, around 4,600 square feet of sand filters, which hard to see because they are underground, but it's very time consuming, and the excavation and paving of the parking lot, which was open before the start of the school year. Now work in this area is progressing only at nights and weekends to try to minimize the impacts to the school. In addition, Purple Line staff has been present during the first week, helping directing pedestrians away from the work zones, and in addition to this, there has been also a safety presentation, actually last week, I believe, where MTA was also a participant. At Sligo Creek, we plan to proceed with the foundations and half of the bridge this fall, and expect to complete this portion of the work at the end of 2024. At Manchester Place, we are currently working on forming and rebarring the walls. This picture again is a bit old. Now we would see the walls on the left also with rebar. And we expect to pour them actually next week. Slabs have been completed, and we will start working on the roof deck in October. At the same time that we work on the roof deck, we also be mobilizing on the interior to finish the remaining concrete structure of the Manchester Place station. As we mentioned before, the team has been coordinating with Montgomery County Public Schools and the community and issue flyers explaining, which is what we can see a bit depicted in that picture, explaining the new school pattern movements for vehicles and pedestrians, especially the school pickup and drop-off area. The flyers were shared also by email to every parent through the school, and as we explained, we have been, MTA participated in a safety presentation last week. If we go to the next one. Utility work has been completed on the north side of Wayne Avenue between Sligo Creek and Manchester Place, and that allows the widening of Wade Avenue at this location, as we can see in the sketch. In order to start this work, a new MOT phase will be implemented at the end of this month. During this MOT phase, that will last approximately 1 year, traffic and pedestrians will be detoured to the south side of Wayne Avenue. We are currently working and completing the drainage and walls in Arliss Street area in order to proceed with Long Branch Station before the end of the year. Asphalt has been removed, and we are completing the preparation work necessary to start foundations of the Long Branch Station. Closing is expected to be active around a year and a half until key portions of the stations are completed and the street is reconstructed. We understand the sensitivity of Arliss Street area and appreciate the community participation on the walkthroughs. Communication teams actually have been sharing all the action items with the construction team, and we have been proceeding with these action items. We restriped crosswalks, removed water barrels on the pathways for pedestrians to access the giant supermarket, and general trash cleanup and additional signage. We continue checking regularly the area for safety. We also try to work with the closely construction and communication department, and we have some challenges in this area. Some barrels that move magically from one day to another one, and some challenges regarding following safety signage. In order to address these challenges, we are currently working, and we already have a pretty neat sketch to prepare some safety flyers and deliver to the current residents with the goal to emphasize the need to respect the safety work measures that we currently have on site.
All right, I'll take it from here. So we have a lot of business and community engagement. We do a lot of briefings. As Hugo mentioned, we just did some safety briefings with the schools on last week. And throughout the summer, our business engagement team completed more than 300 check-ins in Montgomery County. We also put out a project newsletter and post social media every month. Our newsletter for this month is coming out this week. with important updates of construction and also pointing out some of the members of the team and key updates of the project. We can move to the next slide to talk about our community advisory team meetings that are upcoming in October. Focusing on Montgomery County, October 10th, we'll have Silver Spring. October 17th, Bethesda and Chevy Chase. October 24th, Greater Littonville and Woodside. And November 7th, Long Branch. The meeting schedule is available on the website, and the press release will come out this week. So please keep a lookout for that, and they will all be virtual. Again, as we did back in February, we got so much participation and we received feedback from it that we kept it virtual. We want to make sure we're here in front of the community and responding appropriately. With that, to talk about even more that we're doing in the community, we wanted to talk about Grant.
Thanks. So I'm excited to break some news today in announcing our Beyond the Rails community grant program. In our time here in the community, we've seen so many groups doing such great things for the wellness and well-being of the community, and we wanted to participate in that some way. So we're unveiling a community grant program where local groups can apply for funds to assist with some of the projects that they're working on to improve general well-being, safety of the community or the environment along our alignment. It's a real way for us to get involved. So we think that we'll roll out this program with an initial deadline for November 30th, 2023, but accept applications on a rolling basis and make awards twice per year going forward. So again, this is the first time we've sort of announced it. I'll be following up with emails to all of your offices, other community groups, and everywhere else in the coming days. And of course, we'll be publicizing it at the upcoming CAT meetings. But for now, it is live on the website today at that link for more information. So just excited to do something and begin more tangibly giving back in those communities that we're serving.
All right, so that completes our presentation. Just a reminder, we have the website at purpleimd.com, and also you can reach us at outreach@purpleimd.com too.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen, for that presentation. I'll note that since the leadership team was reconstructed, I've heard positive things about improved engagement, which is great, and I always appreciate people breaking news at our committee, so feel free to come back anytime. But over the last 5 years I've been on the council, I have been told that this project was going to be open and operational in 2023 and 2024 and 2026 and 2027. So how confident are you that this is going to be operational in 2027?
So we have regular meetings where we work through the schedule to develop mitigation strategies, to always try to work to speed up the schedule, but we're pretty confident in the 2027, but we recognize that there are some things that may pop up that we just cannot predict, and we'll have to address those as they come up. But as of today, it is spring of 2027, and that is what we're working towards.
And I picked up on the word you used in your opening presentation, adjustment. So there might be more adjustments, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. But at this point in time, it's 57% complete?
That is correct.
The correct number? Okay. I have a few detailed questions, and then we'll open it up to my colleagues for more. I'll start my way west and then work my way east. So starting in Bethesda, you had the slide about the elevator, right, and to connect the Purple Line to the Bethesda WMATA station. It's my understanding that WMATA was supposed to put out an RFP to actually begin that work, and over the last number of years, as things have slipped, the cost of that mezzanine has gone from $2.4 million to, I believe, $25 million of late. Do you have an update for WMATA, or at least more details about that mezzanine to see how much it's progressed?
Just a slight update that I got from their project manager on Friday, Alan Watson. But again, he will have all the details regarding WMATA's construction progress on what they're constructing. But one of the things is they report they are not behind schedule with all of that. And they are closely coordinating the activities with us and the teams, MTS team, with all of that. But they plan to advertise late this month for that.
So the RFP has not been issued yet. Is that what you mean by advertise?
I'm reading exactly what they gave to me,
Okay.
but
Because the follow-up is, has the RFP been
yes.
has been posted, and you're saying that they're advertising, so I'll put 2 and 2 together. So
Correct.
that's coming soon.
Yes.
Okay. As I said, moving from west to east, the Capitol Crescent Trail. So many people want to be able to use it. What is the status of the trail, at least with regard to when it can be functioning? Are there any additional thoughts as to opening up parts of it or doing something while we continue waiting till 2027 or beyond?
No, I appreciate the question because we get it a lot, and we are working our best to open it as quickly as we can, but we will work to open it when it's safe to open it. Doran may have some more details in regards to the schedule piece, but over to you, Doran.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate what we all know, and that is the Capitol Crescent Trail is hugely important to the community, and it's an important part of this project, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Connecting communities, finding better ways to get around is what we aim to deliver, and the Capitol Crescent Trail is a huge part of that. So it's not lost on us. It's something that is still a few years out there. So as we're looking towards a 2027 opening for the train, is there ways we can open a portion or all of the Capitol Crescent Trail earlier than that? It's something that is at the front of our minds. I was in Ugo's office with the segment lead, so a few layers down below Ugo, really planning and getting his opinion on how he thinks things are going to shake out over the next couple of years. So it's too early at this point to say definitively, but it's something that is at the front of our mind and a question that we're asking ourselves as we go forward and as we do kind of firm up and evaluate that schedule out in the out years. It's breaking news I'd love to also break here.
Open invitation to do so. Only
Yeah.
with positive news, though.
Yes.
I just want to remind you all that because of the millions of dollars that the county is contributing to this project, I believe, and I can look to Dr. Orland to confirm this belief, but the arrangement was that the trail will open ahead of service for the Purple Line. Is that correct?
I think the agreement is that the trail will open no later than when revenue service starts on the Purple Line. I know that the executive and the council have been urging the state to find a way to open it earlier. And I guess the question is,
Well, right, that was the roundabout way to say open it as soon as you can. If
why not open
required
it
to do
when
so.
the construction is basically done, but while you're doing testing? Why not do that? Because my understanding is there's about a 9-month period or so from when the construction of the Purple Line is finished and the trail is finished. But then what's happening on the line is that the trains are being tested. Why couldn't the trail be opened 9 months ahead?
It's a fair observation. Again, we're not, that's part of the conversations we're having, right? So again, not to commit to anything today, but as soon as it's possible to do so, we understand and are sympathetic, and we'd like to get it open just as much as anyone, more.
That's it. Right. You mentioned Wayne Avenue, an avenue that is right by where I live, and so I know the south side of it, and trying to navigate through all of that. A lot of that seems like it's utility work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what is the update or the status of the utility work? I had seen something that said in the last few months there had not been a whole lot of utility work done. Or is there any problems with any of the utility providers? Do we need to coordinate anything?
No, we've been engaged with the utility providers, and we have monthly check-ins with all of them. But I wouldn't turn around any help from you all. So if you do want to engage with the utility providers, there's always room so that we can keep that relationship going. But Ugo will probably have a better update in regards to utility status along Wayne Avenue and all of that.
There is some very important utility packages that has been completed. Actually, one example is just the slide that was mentioning the section between Manchester Place and Sligo, and that's a good example where all the WCC work was finalized, and that allowed us to progress the work. So these additional MOT phases that we're going to see in the forthcoming weeks that we understand are annoying are the proof that things are moving forward and that these utilities are being completed.
This committee does work very closely with our utilities as well, so don't hesitate to use us need be.
I do appreciate that.
And then just last question I have. Have there been any changes in the requirements for once the track work is done, once the route is complete, and we start training the drivers, the operators? I know that there's a long training period. Has any of that changed? Again, just to set expectations that once the track work is complete, it will still take some time before it is open.
Yeah, it's a complex and risky time in terms of working out our system, and something that we're very focused on. So that hasn't changed. We have allowed sufficient time on the back end for that very important testing of our trains, our systems, our drivers. Everything will be kind of for the first time. So that as we look to either, as things come up, we change our schedule around, we call it mitigate or accelerate. That's one area that we're not touching because we're going to need that time on the background on the back end to really sufficiently test and prove out the system.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll turn it over to the council member who, amongst the three of us, whose district is in the middle of this.
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you all very much for being here today and the continued work. And I do need to do a shout out to Carla Julian, who has been phenomenal and just incredibly responsive on many things. And Ed Davis has been great to work with as well. And I'm very excited for Ms. Lamb to come on and looking forward to working with her. And thank you for the Beyond the Rails. Before we get to the pictures, though, I have a couple of questions just overall. And one is, I had made this request back in March, and I would ask when you come back again to please include the Tacoma Langley station. That is, part of it may be in Prince George's, and you all may consider it a Prince George's station. The impact that it is having on University Boulevard and on New Hampshire to our businesses there and our residents is huge. And so, I mentioned this last time, and I just really request that any updates to this committee or this council include the Tacoma Langley station. We consider that part of Montgomery County, and the impacts it's having is huge on our community. So,
Will do.
Thank you. So before we delve into the pictures, I thought I don't have a lot. I just have a couple, and I know we sent them to you beforehand. I did want to speak to kind of overall coordination, particularly how it relates to ensuring safety around the construction zones for our residents, and making sure that people have access. As you mentioned, we did do the walk around Arliss, and again, like going out and doing the walk-arounds, getting the list, you all have been really responsive. However, I don't want to do that anymore, quite frankly. I do, in my district, I do have the large majority of Purple Line stations, and the amount of time that is taking my office to collect and communicate and work with is a huge amount of time. And I would really like to know how we're going to be able to better coordinate, and how you plan to do that moving forward, so that, it's not going to be perfect, right? This is construction, and I get that. But how can we make sure, and how are you all making sure about the safety and the access issues? If you could just talk globally, because that's the question we get most often. Like, once they find out, like, when is it going to come? This is the second question.
No, I appreciate the question, and I'll start out answering, but we can each answer from different perspectives. But the team has, over the last couple months, re-engaged as far as how we are approaching this. We started some monthly check-ins with Montgomery County, Prince George's County, so talking globally along the project, because safety is number one for us as we construct the project. And a couple of those things that we're doing is really having those one-on-one conversations and getting the concerns and having our team go out there to be proactive in addressing it, so we don't have to receive the pictures and all of that. We've had more and more communications amongst the three of us of how our teams are going to be out there more, and also how we can take off from your plate, from you having to go out there. So that is in deep discussions, and not just discussions, because we can talk all day. That's in actions of things that we're doing and making changes on our teams to refocus the priorities, to put more emphasis on already the emphasis we have on safety, but putting more on that and the upkeep of the site, because that is important, because we are right in the middle of traffic, right in people's backyards, front yards, and we recognize that we are impacting people's lives.
Yeah, I'll just say even more, because it's fundamental to what we do. I've been spending more time on site as well. Again, I think you should. It is definitely not your job, and it's our job. It's my job, and until such time as we're kind of comfortable that it's in a state we want, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the sidewalks around town, and I have been. So we have added more resources specifically dedicated to this. So we now have crews doing a better job taking care of, you see some vegetation there along the fence line, making sure the fence is back up in a timely manner. So we need to raise the level of the site. It got to where it got to. The new team came in and has done a great job, and the progress has been spectacular. And we just got to remember we're also neighbors to a tremendous number of businesses and residents. And so that is an area that we are looking to improve. And again, not just with words, but with tangible resources to address some things we see out there. So we've seen progress. It's 16 miles. There's, as we mentioned, 60 active sites. We move things around every day. We need to make sure when we leave at night, we have it buttoned up and safe. That's something that we're stressing with each one of our crews. We probably have over 100 crews out there. So it's a big ship to turn, and I believe we are making progress. And I think the proof will be in you all hearing fewer and fewer complaints and being a little bit more pleased as you drive by. I think we're heading in that direction. And we just need to continue to be proactive, and I think that proactivity is also going to allow us to be more quick to react as well. In the past, sometimes it's taken us a little bit of a while to react, but as you mentioned, Carla, Ray, Ugo, the team here, we are committed to when we hear something, it gets on a list, it gets addressed quickly, because as you noted, things will slip through. It is construction, but we need to address them quickly.
You almost said everything, so difficult to add more things, but we have been adding more resources as well. We almost double the MOT crews if you compare with where we were almost 6 months ago. As it was explained, we have also adding resources and take care of all the mowing and all the cleaning for the project. Sometimes it's challenging. I have to say that it's a large project, and we're also trying to make sure that we clean our own project, but also other areas that we understand are important for the public. But we are also communicating at every level. So when there is a concern, that concern is transmitted to almost every level at the MTA, concessionaire, and MTS to make sure that they're addressed promptly. So at the same time that is communicated to the superintendent, is communicated to me, to the different segment leads, and the different communication departments that are comprising Purple Line, in order to expedite the response. We received these slides last week, and most of these areas have already been addressed. We have to do some additional work, cleanup work, besides the fence that are already placed where they should be. But again, to emphasize that we understand the importance of it, and that we have addressed different methods to communicate faster through the different levels that we have in the project.
Great, and as you notice, this is on Piney Branch Road. You talked about the vegetation and everything. I want to go back to when you said, I think you used the phrase button up or a site, like, and our residents are asking us this, like, how are you doing that right now, or going to do it in the future, to make sure that, there aren't things in the sidewalk, because, right, things get moved as people are doing construction. We understand that, the wind and other things, but how are we making sure that in the evenings, especially on the weekends, people can walk in these areas?
So far, we have around between 25 and 30 staff just checking the MOT for the project full time. MOT essentially is the maintenance of traffic, which takes also care of all the pedestrian movements. In addition to this, there are several inspectors from both concessionaire and the MTA that communicate as soon as an event has been detected or an improvement has been detected, and we have a very short period of time to respond. So every time that we get any concern, is responded and addressed the same day. That doesn't mean that eventually something might pop up that somebody can see, but we understand the fast response that our team needs to provide, and it's monitored also by the by the same inspectors. So the same inspectors from the team that are checking the projects in order are also monitoring that we're addressing any of the concerns within the time frame that we have, which, as I said, it's hours and always within the same day.
Great. We can, Dr. Orlin, move on. This is, I think we have 2 slides, well, that was another slide of the same thing on Piney Branch Road. We've talked about, I think the next 2 slides are on Bonifant. And this is, I think they're similar slides. And understanding what you talked about before, the work, I understand Bonifant is probably one of the hardest places you all are working right now. But what you can see here is this is gravel. It's loose. This walkway, I was just there Wednesday night. The reason I was there is because the Bonifant is an apartment building for seniors. I think you all know it well. I know Carla does. And I was having a meeting with them, and I mean, even myself walking here, this is the access that they're walking. And many of these seniors have canes, have walkers, and again, you can't really quite tell, but this is loose asphalt, gravel. And I understand you may need to be accessing, day in and day out, but is there anything we can do to make, because this is the way they get to the library, this is the way they get to the bus stops, restaurants, the supermarket, and this is really tough to navigate. Is there anything we can do here on Bonifant?
This is an area that we have been working actually also today. So we moved some of the store material to provide more space. And as we speak, we should be actually cleaning this area. An example of the additional resources that we have added are 2 sweepers that we purchased in order to have them fully working at the job site during the forthcoming months. That also will help to improve some of the fast response to some of the situations.
Mm-hmm. Great. Next, I think it's just another picture of Bonifant, and then we get to, that there you can see the loose, like, that's pretty hard to navigate, and it's been like that so. The other downside is you have a council member who not only represents this, but this is where I live, and I drive up and down University every day, and I'm probably on Bonifant at least once a week. So I'm glad to hear that that's being addressed. So this is an area, and I know, and Director Briggs, I'm so glad that you are offered to meet more regularly with MCPS and with Sims on this. But just for context for my colleagues and others who are watching, and again, I thank you so much for being there first day of school. I was unfortunately not able to be there. My staff was there, but I know you all were there bright and early, and I appreciate that. But this location, basically what we're looking at is how students have to walk to access the school. This is 2 schools. Sometimes we focus on the middle school, but these are 2 schools, K through 8th grade. There are 1,500 students. And right now, as we can see, and you can see in the distance, a car has actually moved over into what is sort of the asphalt walkway where students are supposed to be walking to school. And there's no partitions, there's no barriers between children walking and oncoming cars. And I know you've had many conversations about this, but I just want to know, where do we stand with this, and how can we get this improved?
As I can start out, after we walked it on August 28th, I believe was the first day of school, we immediately had a meeting with SHA and some other meetings to come up with different mitigation options of how we can temporarily provide the sidewalk here and make it even more safe along the path as we're constructing. We have come up with some options. We're still working with SHA, and I think we've come up with some things, but we just have to now get it all scheduled. And I'll turn it over to Ugo to give an update of where we might be with that.
We have had a meeting actually with SHA last week, right? This section we review with SHA. It's in compliance. But that doesn't mean that we don't hear what areas can be improved. So one of the action items that were triggered after that meeting was change the level between the road and the sidewalk. So it's not exactly the same level. So the idea is to try to repave around 3 inches on top of the area for the pedestrians, so it can be better identified that the goal of essentially to try to differentiate better what is the sidewalk and the road. Yes. This area is an area that we are actively working. So to include a barrier essentially doesn't work because we need to access this area constantly. That's why the solution that was discussed with SHA was to try to differentiate better both paths.
Additionally, on top of that, we have the flaggers at the different intersections, and the team is out there, I guess you can call them ambassadors,
yep,
making sure that we help guide people, as Ugo was mentioning earlier, to follow the signage that we have out there and to try to encourage everyone to stay on the sidewalks in the different areas as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. And how long are we going to have the sidewalk ambassadors for? Do you know?
Ugo?
I think for the first week of school, we were out there every day, afternoon and evening on that part of the sidewalk, and then MTS construction crews have people stationed to make sure no one enters the work zone, and then there are the crossing guards.
Okay. And that's what we're going to have through the school year.
The crossing guards for sure. The work site's going to continue to change, and there are teams out there, right?
Yeah, that's an active work site, so we're going to still have staff, craft, working in the area. But the idea is once the public gets more used to the traffic pattern, to try to dedicate these resources in other areas that have a more urgent need. So we are monitoring how the area is working, and depending on how things are progressing, to try to reassign resources in other areas.
Mm-hmm. I guess one of the things that I appreciate the work that's being done that is of concern to folks is when we hear that this was okay because it met certain requirements, that a school year was even started like this. And you know, this is different than the trash being picked up or vegetation being cut back. And so, and we all understand that contracts were signed years ago thinking this project would be done by now. But we're living through it, and we have at least 3 more school years. So we have this year and more coming. And I guess my bigger question for you all is, how do we make sure something like this is not acceptable? Like that no one would ever think that this met the contract or was acceptable for one of the work sites. Because again, having school students walk along here, kindergarten through 8th grade, and as we get into the winter months, it's going to get darker. So how do we avoid this? Because we're going to continue working together, right? And so how do we make sure we don't have a repeat of this?
I could take that. So we're strategizing more and really collaborating more and thinking forward as we look ahead in the schedule. So as we mentioned earlier, with all the different stakeholders, we're reestablishing those meetings by working with Montgomery County, I think Christy's somewhere behind me, and SHA on a regular basis. So thinking then of how we can sit down, look at what may be upcoming, making sure we look at the safety and the pedestrian piece closer than what we have been doing, and trying to plan that out as we move throughout the different phasings of the project.
Well, I think I made my point, so I'll end here. And I do appreciate the work you're doing. And, you know, as you're rolling out other things, please include our office. And again, I do appreciate you working more closely with MCPS and moving this forward. So we are going to be living with each other for a few more years at least. And so we do see this as a partnership and want to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart, for those questions, and very appropriate given the conversation we just had, hours ago about pedestrian safety in our community, and most importantly, making sure our kids are able to get to school and home. So thank you, Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you, and I appreciate your in-depth look at this, and I agree that's just not acceptable to expect kids to do that. Just a couple things. One is President Glass talked at the very beginning about 2027 and the certainty of that opening date, and I know that certainty is just not a word that you use with construction projects, but I think that I learned from a boss a long time ago. He said, bad news does not get better with age, right? And so I think, of course, there's going to be contingencies that come up that may adjust the project a little bit this way, a little bit that way. But I think it's just so critical for the trust of not only the trust of the council, but the trust of the community, that we are fully aware of any potential delay as it happens. And so I understand that there's a tendency to hope that it gets better, or hope that a situation turns around, but I just think it's just critical that we're aware if anything happens. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the grant program, the community grant program, I think that's great. I appreciate that. Grant programs can be a funny thing. Either you've got 0 people who apply, or you've got like 307.
I think we have a list.
Okay, good. Because I think that, and we've talked about this on the council for all resources in the county, What tends to happen is that the people who are more savvy get a jump on it and get the money and get and the people who aren't quite as sophisticated just aren't even aware of it, let alone write a grant that could be competitive, right? So I'm sure that Councilmember Stewart will be in the community working on that. But I just want to be very cautious, particularly because there's such it's great, the money's great, but it's small amounts, and that amount of money could really, really benefit some small organizations, and it would be a drop in the bucket, not negligible to other more sophisticated organizations. So I just wanted to just mention that I think it's great, and thank you. I just hope that it goes to people that can really use the money.
Just to respond quickly, I mean, that's helpful feedback, and that's exactly what we need your help with. And I think the benefit we have is we're not some big federal program who's going to have 20 people on a panel reviewing this grant that they're going to be kicked out because they didn't use the right font, right? So I think we can be flexible within reason to adapt to different levels of either sophistication or size, whatever it is. So I'm excited to give it a shot, and since it's on a rolling basis, we can always take feedback and tweak it for next time and try to be as impactful as possible.
Super, thank you.
I appreciate Councilmember Balcom emphasizing the grant program and making sure that it goes to the communities that need it. And yes, I will add to Councilmember Stewart's list as well. But I want to end on the note of equity, which is really what we're talking about. And there is an unfortunate reality, and it is right now where a lot of the construction is taking place, where the road work has been most troublesome to pedestrians and drivers, where there are potholes and uneven streets tend to be in our more low-income communities. And the people who have come to me over the last number of years before you came online on this project have said that they can least afford to fix a flat tire or when there are other vehicular related issues. And so it is not only important to get this project up and running for the economic benefits, the environmental benefits, but also to allow the people in this community to get on with their lives and to do so without having to worry about the road condition that is before them. And so we will continue this conversation. Again, open invitation to break positive news here. Positive news. And let's just keep talking and appreciate your work. Okay. And with that, this committee is adjourned.
Travel slow.